Welcome to your check-in with Gwen, a podcast that operationalizes healing, teaching you how to do the mental work and build daily routines that help in the creation of your best life. Whether you're rebuilding after a rough season or chasing a dream. During our check-in conversations, I will demonstrate how to examine your wellness utilizing the 5 domains of health. I'm your host, Gwendolyn McLemore, and I'm very grateful that you're here. So settle in, take a breath, and land as I guide us towards a path of healing gratitude. I feel so changed. I feel a little out of it. So let's jump into our check-in so I can tell you what's going on in my mind. Physically, I will give myself a 6.5, 7 out of 10. I found a Pilates studio near where I'm staying, so that's been nice. Drinking less than I've been drinking the entirety of the vacation. I know when I get back I have to do an extreme detox, but yeah, I'm sleeping better. Unfortunately, I'm still handling a lot of business, so I wake up and do a lot of work-related stuff all hours of the night, so it's just kind of annoying. Spiritually, I am feeling calm. I am feeling more aware of myself. I am feeling like I'm on the path of being rejuvenated, which is nice. And I'll explain more why. Mentally, I am feeling something like peace or acceptance of so many big changes happening. I've been journaling more the past couple of weeks. Spending more time in water, near water. Just a lot with water overall. Rewatching some of my episodes this past year, I don't know when I've moved to become a dehydrated person. That's a very big departure from who I was growing up. But I didn't realize how often I was walking around dehydrated, which is kind of weird. Just trying to replenish the water in my body. I think I've become hardened in more ways than one. Mentally, I'm feeling peace. I'm feeling slightly organized, which is nice. I'm just trying to do the things that I say I'm going to do in a timely manner, in a manner that's not harmful to myself. And emotionally, I think I'm dealing a lot with self-forgiveness, right? Acceptance, admiration, feeling positive about myself. Appreciation is a good word. And so emotionally, I am feeling grounded. Yeah. I'm feeling like I'm moving through a different phase of grief regarding things, right? And so acceptance is nice, even on a foundational level. This episode is entitled Miss Accountability. Basically, Miss Accountability has entered the chat, and I'm going to give some more context onto who I am and what has been going on. And I want to demonstrate that while it's important to gain language on systems, whether that's physical systems, whether that's social systems, it's good to increase your vocabulary, but what that helps you do is accurately define something without putting so much of yourself in the story. And so it's helpful because it's helpful professionally, but you don't want to get in the trap of over-explaining something and not dealing with how it makes you feel on an internal level, right? There's a lot of words for what I just described. You don't want to get in the habit of over-explaining your circumstances without placing yourself in the story. And it's one thing to describe your actions. It's another thing to analyze how they made you feel and your motivations behind your actions, right? And so I've been doing a lot of thinking since I put out that last episode, episode 20. So if you didn't watch episode 20, it would be a nice watch before watching this one. And I was trying to figure out what was my struggle with publishing that episode, because I had it recorded maybe 2 weeks before I put it out. And the delay of telling my team was maybe only a few days. And so it was just weird, why didn't I want to put it out? And I'm not someone who deals with embarrassment much. Embarrassment for me was one of the emotions that got placed to the side when I was quite young. Just in terms of my survival, I had to cut off emotions that were harmful for me to focus on making it through my circumstances. And so embarrassment happens, but it's not something that I'm afraid of or debilitating. And so I was trying to figure out, was I embarrassed about sharing the news? And I'm like, no. Not only did I share it in a tasteful, tactful way, I also left out just a lot of important details, I gave a very good overview. I don't think I was upset at the message. I realized I didn't like how I sounded, the tone of it all. And what I mean is, it's not, I felt sad, or, I felt emotional. I think that I felt victimized making the video, and I wanted to explain my guilt, and I wanted to explain how I got there and why it wasn't an easy choice. But I think that the tone of the video was, look at all these things that have happened to me. And for me, I do believe that people get dealt shitty circumstances. I myself have been dealt shitty circumstances. But you're only a victim for a very short moment, right? You can only actively be a victim while the bad thing is happening. And as soon as that moment is over, you instantly are a survivor of whatever it was. And it's not to diminish crimes that have happened, right? You might be a survivor of a particular crime, but the moment that you kept living and that act was over against you, you're not a victim anymore. And if you work with me, that's not something that I just straight up say to people. But that is kind of a goal that I'm trying to get people to understand. And it's something that was shared to me years ago in a certain way. Yeah, today's episode is going to kind of be a doozy, but I'm going to demonstrate that accountability has a lot of different phases, and it's not something to be afraid of. It's a very helpful tool to help you be your best self. And it's the only way that you make real meaning of your life is if you can be accountable for your life. You don't control everything. However, a lot of people don't realize how much control they have in certain circumstances, because the number one thing you have control over is your response to shit. And so you can cultivate as many different types of responses in life as you want, right? You are not trapped to respond in one way. And people might only recognize a few of their natural response styles, and there's so many. And so we're going to dive into a lot of the topics of last week, and I hope this episode is helpful. If these messages or this journey has been helpful, please feel comfortable to like, share, and subscribe. I'm just trying to reach as many people as possible. I also want to say, if you ever want to email me about anything and you want me to do a video, I'm so open to it. You can email me at gratitude, GRATITUDE, gratitude@gwensguidance.com. Also on Substack, Check In with Gwen. So, this message of accountability actually came to me in a very funny and positive way, right? The same day that I made that video, I faced a crazy ass fear that I didn't know I had. I went ziplining through the jungle. I did 38 lines. I was up in the air 400 or 500 feet in the air, on thin ass wires, just on a cable, ziplining through the jungle for a few hours. And that shit was one of the scariest, most polarizing moments of my life, right? And it came after making one of the hardest messages that I had to make. I also, the following day, I meet someone. I meet a friend, and I meet someone that felt so familiar, but just reflective, right? And so, if you are watching or listening to this, Brian, it was a pleasure meeting you. And so I'm going to describe more of why Brian was such an important meeting. But it was funny because as soon as I said to the universe, hey, I'm still open, I'm not counting out the fact that I might meet somebody, right? I wanted to meet a lifelong friend, or I wanted to meet someone. I go to an event the next day. I meet this guy, and this guy's dressed in the nines. He's very funny. He's from the U.S., and he's a few years younger than me. And he's a great conversationalist, right? Brilliant, just funny. And I'm enjoying talking to this person. And we decide to hang out all night, and we decide to hang out the next day. And then we decide to fucking find somewhere to watch the World Cup. And we stay out until 6 something in the morning. And it's 3 days of back-to-back memories and crazy-ass conversations. And so, I bring him up to say I felt like I instantly met a friend that I could have in my life for a long time. Basically, last video, I put it out in the universe. This is how I felt about those things. And less than a week later, I'm having a response, right? And then I start to think, most of my life, that's how things pan out. I have to be very mindful of what I'm putting out into the universe because these things tend to come true. It just goes back to the situation that I talked about last video. All I manifested was that I didn't want to do it, yet I kept taking actions contradictory to that. I never set out to be a social services agency. I kept saying I didn't want to do it, and I can't be surprised that I'm on my way to not doing it anymore. And I explained the circumstances very well last time, but I didn't really explain how I feel and what it's meant to me. It's more about what just happened. And people don't know how to help in that situation, right? Except saying, I feel sorry for you. And it's because I'm giving them circumstances that they can't change. I'm not really giving them insight into how I feel. And I've gotten really good at that. This message, even if it sounds somber, it's really not. It's my best way of thinking. I enjoy it. I think it makes me a healthier, happier person. And so, yeah, let's get back into it. The reason meeting my friend was so significant is because in the last few years of my life, like I said, I filtered out embarrassment. The thing is, human beings can have this very big ego. I can have a very big ego of thinking that I can be very specific with how I train my body. But your body is a body of systems. And so tuning out 1 or 2 or 3 or 7 emotions that I don't want to deal with while thinking that I have full access to all the other emotions is false, right? Human beings think that we can compartmentalize and make everything so black and white and separated, and it's just not true. It'll seep its way through in the other systems of our body, other systems of our health. And so, for me, I thought about how much I talked about social disappointment or grief, and I had to think the walls that I've put up over the past few years because I was punishing myself and trying to punish the world. I was hiding, I was sad, I was ashamed, I was healing. The level of wall building skill that I have, the walls are thick, okay, and they're very effective. I can really just not let shit get in and remain focused on the goal. However, it just shows up in different ways. And you can't think that you're just so open to the universe, while blocking out so much negative stuff that you think just doesn't exist. That's not how it works, right? So you're probably like a lot more numb to your emotions than you think you are. You're probably a lot more numb to connection than you think you are. And so it was very funny because my friend sidestepped those walls quite easily. So it was very clear that we wanted to connect, and it was very fun. It was very nice, and it was through a lot of crazy conversations of the full spectrum of life, which was very fun. The reason that these walls were so reinforced these past few years is that maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I met a group of people that really changed my life, right? They changed how I see myself. They changed me professionally. They changed me socially. They changed me with habits, right, of mixing business and pleasure. They changed me a lot of different ways. And this group of people inspired me to try my best, and it's not my usual. What I mean by that is that I try my best for opportunities and ideas that I want to manifest, and I think that I have placed connections with the people as like secondary in my life. I'm much more in tune with making my goals come true than I am with using my best self for people. I don't think that people have deserved my best self, and I realize that that's a shitty way of looking at life, right? And it's like spiting yourself. So that's a whole different conversation than the one I'm having right now. Right now we're talking about social health, social domain. And so when it comes to this group of people in this time period of my life, I felt very exposed. I was on the eve of heartbreak. I was on the eve of moving, making all these big changes. And it felt almost magical, right? Because it was. But this was coming after a time of a lot of spiritual searching. What I'll say is that I was living a version of myself that felt so free and so self-important and so elevated, so I thought, But what I was also diving into was like living in my body, which is not a way that I have lived life. And I think in that time period, I was the most in my body and present that I had ever been. And it was intoxicating, right? I felt blinded by the light, right? And I was being blinded by my own light being reflected back to me, but I was being blinded by like being around so many individuals where I wasn't the brightest or smartest in the room, And contrary to what other people might have thought of me at that time, I didn't think I was. I think I was the most bouted in the room because I was. But I don't think that I was the brightest or smartest. I was like soaking up so much, and I was being so poured into. And I felt like giving my all, giving everything I had. And it was a very crazy time. And when it came to an end, the realizations came in like time after time after time. Not only that I made the right decision, but that I was so blind. I was so delusional. I was so intoxicated in so many ways. I was so open and trusting and giving access to so many different people that didn't need access. And to hear that they didn't want it, to hear how much they rejected me after, like it stung so bad, because then it's like, do I care enough to expose lies? Or do I just accept everything that comes with my choices? And I chose the latter, and I was so greatly rewarded. But I didn't recognize those rewards until I got through the pain. I think after that time period, I was so depleted, spiritually, physically, financially, socially. I was just like so depleted that I just went into a cocoon so I could heal myself, right? And I tried to bring others into the cocoon, and cocoons only have like space for you. right? When you go into your healing pod, you cannot drag people into your healing with you. It will always end badly. That's a you process. And I don't know if I'm still fully healed, but it took me years. And I think the recognizing of how much I betrayed myself, not only did I betray other people and do other people wrong, I betrayed myself many different ways and many different times. And I think to have better discernment, I just shut the shit down with everybody. Like I said in the beginning, it was more of, I think, a punishment without me recognizing. I was punishing myself for bad things in the past. And I was punishing the world. And I realized it's like, who the fuck am I to do either? Like, what a waste of my talent, my energy. These thoughts come to me on the eve of having the social type of night that I wanted to have, right? Of telling the universe, I'm still open to this, I still want this, and then it coming. Who's to say it's perfect? I would be okay if I never seen this person again, but to get to this point of social reflection, I went through many different stages of grief, right? I won't say I acted in a way that wasn't aligned with my values. Is that my concept of what my values in life were was very narrow. It was only the things that I thought were correct or good, not the full experience of like who I am as a person, right? And what I mean is like, what values did I have sexually? What values did I have materialistically? What values did I have socially? What values did I have when it came to power and responsibility? Right? Questions I hadn't asked myself. I didn't want to know the answers to because I didn't like to think of myself as that person. And so to get these answers, I literally had to hate myself for a while. I had to feel sorry for myself. I had to act like it didn't happen. I had to construe what did happen. I had to apologize. I had to forgive. I had to be angry and do it over and over again in different ways until I realized, like, this is what I'm taking away. I had to write about it. I had to do therapy about it. I had to drink, smoke, pray, complain about it. Recognize the pattern within everything that I knew about it. Right? I had to analyze what happened. What I came up with is that due to a lot of different circumstances in my life, I have learned to separate my emotional health from other parts, right? I have learned to deprioritize it, not separate it. I can deprioritize my emotional health to make the other aspects of my health come to the surface. And what I realized is that I had deprioritized it so much that my connections were struggling, my connection with myself was struggling, my connections with everything were struggling because I couldn't see how my emotions are driving my behavior because I couldn't identify what the emotions were. And so that's partially why I emphasize, like, you gotta, like, tap in and know that some emotions feel safer and then some feel worse. And that's probably what you're dealing with, right? Another thing, accountability-wise, I think physically, I have learned on this trip that the coping skills that I grew up using aren't the best coping skills still. I think that there were a lot of beautiful parts of this trip, but there were a lot of disappointing things I hadn't prepared for. And traveling with someone that you're not dating is weird. It's a very Americanized way of doing things. And when you're in countries that aren't America, people don't have time to understand the circumstances. And so it's been very awkward and not pleasant at times. It's just easy to want to numb out, right? And so while I did so many positive coping skills, my relationship with drinking on this trip has changed so much because I was so many months sober. In the time period that I just described a few years ago, that also changed my relationship with drinking. I'd never been in a place where so many elevated people drink so heavily to numb out from lives that they were trapped in. And so to see that level of high functioning alcoholism and for me to link up and throw myself into it, it really changed things. Since that time period, I just changed how I felt about alcohol and just recognized how much of a poison and like potent drug it is, you know? And I go on these stretches of not drinking, but my family is very drink heavy family, right? And I grew up in a culture of drinking. And so it's just something I know. And the places I traveled, women did not drink or really move as freely as I moved, right? And I think that it brought a lot of insecurity and shame to it that I don't think I've ever felt in my life. And my question or my thought is like, I'm less of a lady. It's like, what am I trying to escape so hard from, right? Like, what is this feeling of uncomfortability? Is it not knowing what to do socially? Is it because it's an expectation? Because I'm an American? Is it because that's what I'm used to doing with who I'm traveling with? But neither one of us have been in that space for like 6 or 7 months. So it still feels artificial as hell. And then it's like, once you take that long off of drinking and then you start again, it just doesn't hit the same, you know? It doesn't hit the same because you start to physically feel the effects on your body so much more because you were feeling so much healthier. Recognizing that I will deprioritize my physical health more than I'll deprioritize my emotional health. I've been living at the most important parts of my health for a very long time. Social, mental, financial. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That person is like physically healthy first, then socially healthy, and then like mentally and spiritually, like self-actualized. Like you build your health through your physical health. And I just have been thinking what this trip has shown me is like how much I'm willing to deprioritize those foundational levels of health just to think I have control over those top levels of health. To think I have control over my mental and my spiritual health while actively doing things to mess up my physical health, it doesn't really make sense. And so me realizing that came from me realizing I didn't feel good, right? Even though I'm on this trip of a lifetime, blah, 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 it's like I'm not feeling good. It's because prioritizing the wrong shit, you know what I mean? And it's directly related to a lot of different things. It's directly related to work. It's directly related to optics. I felt like the optics of being able to take this trip left such a feeling of imagination for people. I felt like it inspired people to see more of the world. People asking questions and I had answers. And so there's a beautiful thing happening. But I would be remiss to think, like, why doesn't it feel like this beautiful thing happening? And it's because I'm mentally trying to create this picture that I'm physically not feeling. Not 100% anyway. I had to think, like, why? You know, I'm like, if I'm eating better food and I'm walking more and I'm sun-kissed and I'm in nature and I'm sleeping. And I realized it was because I was drinking too much. And I'm drinking too much to numb out the emotional part of it all. And so all you can do is try to course correct. All you can do is be accountable so you can actually make changes. Not just think shaming thoughts. I shouldn't be doing this. Why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? Mentally, I've stopped doing gymnastics, right? Like, accountability is for the ways that I tire myself out. Trying to force things to move on a timeline so I can feel settled with it versus experiencing things for what they are and doing what you can in that moment. Accountability for keeping myself mentally busy. A lot of things go into keeping up a wall. You gotta give your brain something to focus on. And so I had to think of the ways that I was keeping myself mentally busy to keep adding power to my wall, blocking shit out. Mental gymnastics is a way to distract yourself from your emotions. Having a constant to-do list in your mind is a way to distract yourself. Spiritually, I had to take accountability of why I was overly focusing on deficits. Why am I overly focusing on losses when I know that if I want to manifest a win, I can, and I do, right? Why am I focusing on the worst possible scenario versus the best? Why am I spiritually focusing on what I've lost versus what I've gained? Yeah, I offer these things to let you know that while it's good to be able to externally describe what's going on, you have to know that that's just the top level. To make deep change, you have to figure out what's going on, make your assessment of what's going on, then break it down to what it means for you in all your domains of health. And then once you think you know what it means, you think, why did it get to that meaning? What informs my meaning right now? And then you think, does this meaning align with what I believe in for my life and who I want to be? And do I think it aligns with my higher self? And that's where you can start to come up with a plan of change, right? These are some of the takeaways. Mrs. Accountability, right? Like, I am very big on that so I can be motivated. And so I didn't think it would be this long of an episode. I do apologize, but I appreciate you if you've listened with me. Yeah, you can't be afraid of accountability. You knowing yourself is the biggest life hack that you can have this lifetime. Who am I and what do I want it to mean? How am I living a life in accordance to that meaning that I want to have? And that's not just tied to your outcomes in the world and what you can produce. It's also what you feel, what you experience, what you manifest, what you grow through, what you break down. So, yeah. Check in with you girl. She's doing her best. And yeah, I have one more country left on the list, but it'll be a very, very short visit. And I will be back stateside, sending you love, light, and gratitude for spending some time with me. Remember to check in with yourself and to be gentle while doing so. Check in with your loved ones and strangers, and I'll be here to check in with you soon. Until next time.